Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Scrutiny Budget and Performance panel. Councillor Colin Coulton will be dialing into the meeting. He is with us, and he'll be able to ask questions, but will not be able to vote as he's not actually here in the meeting. The meeting is taking place in the Civic Centre for members of the panel, and as I've said, with some members dialing in via Teams, and the meeting is also being broadcast via YouTube. Could members please use your raise the hand feature, I presume that's if you're phoning in, to speak at the appropriate time and mute when not speaking. There are no fire drills planned in the Civic Centre, so if the alarm goes, please leave by the nearest exit and gather on the grassed area, and please switch mobile phones to silent. So item 1, apologies for absence. I believe we don't have any because all of the panel members are here and Councillor Coulton has dialed in from home. So do we have any declarations of interest? If not, if I can move on to item 3, minutes of the meeting on Monday the 14th of June. Could those who were actually here move these so we can approve them as a correct record?
I'll propose them, Chair.
And I will second those, Chair.
So do you agree? Thank you. That takes us to item number 4, which is matters arising from previous Scrutiny Budget and Performance panel meetings. We have 2 items from the last meeting which remain outstanding, and it is recommended that they remain on the sheet. A further update on the costs associated with refurbishing Pemberton Leisure Centre has been requested from the Director outside of the meeting. The Deputy Director of Finance has provided the following update on the deliverability of the capital programme. The deliverability of the capital programme rests with the project managers, with frequent updates delivered to the leader regarding the capital programme, with an updated profile approved in quarterly monitoring reports to Cabinet where necessary. The delivery of the capital programme is considered over a 3-year period. If members have concerns about particular projects, we can of course respond to them on a case-by-case basis. So going forward in the future, any concerns we do have, if I can bring in the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I think your request was specifically around the leisure facilities. You might recall that we did report back that there was some funding available for carbon neutral schemes at leisure centres. So and we were delaying the wider programme of improvements at the leisure centre until that was done. So that's been done now, and that bid has been made, and we know the timing of that. So we are currently working on what's the programme of improvements at the leisure facilities. So we'll be able to bring you that at a future meeting. I think that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything on that? No. In which case, if we can move on to item 5, which is the Quarter 1 Performance Monitoring Report. If I can welcome Councillor Foster, the Leader of the Council, Gary Hall, the Chief Executive, and Vicky Willett, who I see has dialed in. And if we can start with page 13, paragraph 16, and I'll ask the first question. The shared services progression with the ICT service and shared customer services. What are the anticipated outcomes from this, and what will success look like?
Thank you, Chair. So if I take that one, so shall we start with ICT? So members will recall that the council adopted a joint strategy with Chorley Council in relation to ICT, and part of that is looking at, for instance, the whole infrastructure that the 2 councils run their IT services on. It's quite a significant period of time since they were last refreshed, and we're in the process now of working through that plan in respect of upgrading all the systems and all the infrastructure that goes with it. So we need an infrastructure plan. There's been a series of, and again agreed, a joint strategy in relation to the upgrade of in particular software systems. And again, it's quite some time since a number of those software systems were upgraded too. So we're working through those individually now. And I think there's a couple about to be signed off. I think Revs and Bens is one, iDocs is another one that's due or about to be signed off. So I think there are three things you'll see. You'll see an improved and more robust infrastructure that will include things like a better internet connection. So there's been a bit of a bugger for some people in the past. You'll see a whole series of improvements to software and some of the technology that we currently use. And that is about preparing us for doing things differently in the future, linking into our digital strategy and our ability for people to do things, particularly online and self-service, all those kinds of things, but also enabling staff to work in a different way, to work better remotely, to stop double-handing in terms of some of the information that they process, and to improve in kind of the information we hold and access to information. So we'll see those things. You will hopefully see out of those things, and this will come later on as we start to develop these things, efficiencies from that as well. So with investment in infrastructure and in technology, which is expensive, we need to see, well, what are the benefits? So the benefits are improved working efficiencies and hopefully cashable savings over a period of time. So infrastructure, software technology, and then thirdly, of course, the kind of staffing resource needed to run things like the infrastructure and press forward on information technology changes. So again, that's been signed off now, working kind of through that. This is about having a kind of fit for purpose for the future staffing resource to enable us to move forward on some of these things. We're working towards a kind of cloud-based strategy, which will mean that a lot of the software and infrastructure is held in the cloud, which just means remotely, basically. And as a result of that, the skills that we need to run internally, which is around the local network and all those issues that require us to work locally, all be done in-house. And it's just really kind of upskilling our staff to make sure that we can deliver on the plans that we've got. So I think those are predominantly the big things that hopefully you'll see the outcomes from those reviews.
I think it's let's say on the back of what Gary said as well, that the ICT replacement, the project we're undertaking at Southfibre has been challenging. We'll not beat about the bush. We've had some significant challenges with it. I think all members, particularly members that have been with the council for a number of years now, we have, for one reason or another, and it's not necessarily criticism, but it's not necessarily had the investment it should have had, and it's proven challenging to get us to the place where we need to be. And you will recall, Chair, that recently at the Shared Services Committee and then subsequently Council, we've agreed the joint digital strategy, but there is at least 60% of that resource going into South Ribble over the next 2 years, because South Ribble needs that investment of time and money to get us to the position where we're comfortable being. So something you may want to keep a close eye on moving forward. Cheers.
Okay, thank you. If I can move on to Councillor Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Gary might have covered some of the answers to this already, but I'll ask it anyway. Page 13, paragraph 17. Delivery of the first year of the digital strategy. The recent upgrade in IT seems to have caused issues with employees delivering services. What is the reason for this? Have all the issues now been resolved? And how will lessons be learned? Reference is made to a better customer experience. What evidence is there that this is the case?
Okay, I think I've answered some of that, but not all of it. I think it is. So we recently upgraded to Office 365 and Teams, and I have to say that that's caused us some issues. The main reason for that, or one of the main reasons for that, is, for instance, the different types of technologies that staff are using, and the variety of different machines that people are using. And unfortunately, what you've got is a lot of old machinery and a lot of new technology, and the two things just don't go together. We've been working through the challenges. They're not all fixed, I have to say. It's caused issues for people accessing systems. It's caused issues for people accessing information. There are workarounds that are in place, so nobody is prevented in any shape or form from being able to work and undertake their duties. They just have to do it in a slightly different way. The thing that will fix it is the kind of interface between the hardware and the software, and a thing called Citrix technology. It might sound like I know what I'm talking about at this point, but I see it's very technical. And basically what we need is an upgrade to Citrix, which is the interface technology to enable it to work efficiently, and we're on with doing that. One of the challenges we're facing is access to those technologies. There's a significant waiting list now because of the shortage of chips, and that's causing us some issues in terms of supply. So some of those workarounds could be in place for quite a period of time. I would think maybe between 3 and 6 months before we're able to access all the technology that we need.
Okay, thank you. You want to come back?
Did you make better customer experience? Is there evidence of that?
Yeah. So when it talks to here, it's talking about. I think it's talking about internal customers. So it's talking about staff predominantly. So and councillors as well. Yes, sorry, Paul. I think a number of staff will say. So one of the things that we couldn't do before we introduced the upgrades was staff across shared services were working off 2 platforms. That's changed now, albeit there are still some challenges with it. That's made their working life. Well, it should make their working. I'm just putting Louise now because she's going to say, well, it's still a challenge. But a lot of people will have found the interfaces better. So access to Teams, your ability to contact people through Teams are all improvements. And I think there are a number of members who now use, in particular, Teams to contact people on a regular basis. So you should find that much easier. So all the telephones have disappeared off people's desks. That's the platform and the technology we now use, and you should find that better. I think the majority of people would say that actually that is far better than it was previously.
Karen.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My question is on page 13 and concerns paragraph 18. Let me just turn to it. A single strategy partnership for both Chorley and South Ribble has been agreed. Could you explain what the rationale and advantage for merging South Ribble Partnership and Chorley Public Service Reform Board will be, and what consultation has been carried out, and who actually made this final decision?
Thanks, Karen. There's been a widespread consultation, to be fair, over the past 12 months or so. To be fair, fundamentally, we want to see more out of the partnerships, and we can achieve far more together with Chorley, South Ribble together as one, because fundamentally for me, the most important people to engage at the moment is our health service, and as part of that partnership. And as we move forward, when we look at what the greatest challenges to our local communities, we believe at the moment they are around health and wellbeing. And one of the challenges that the South Ribble Partnership has had, Karen, particularly over the last few years, is engaging with the NHS and the clinical support groups. And one of the big advantages of the Chorley Partnership is they've got some very, very strong relationships already built in there. But those NHS partners don't just work in Chorley, they represent South Ribble and actually Preston in many respects. So what we're trying to do with this, with the new partnership, and the meetings this week, actually, I think it's tomorrow, isn't it? Is it Wednesday? It's actually Wednesday before the meeting of the Cabinet, is engage on a slightly bigger scale with some really positive outcomes post-COVID for our community. And what's pleasing to report to the committee is that our partner organisations are really behind us. They want this to work, and they want to see more delivery of health-related support as well, possibly through the local authorities and not through the NHS, which I hope we'd all agree is a better route for us through the post-COVID world. But Gary, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the point to make is that we've got so many common issues across the two areas that it seems logical and makes sense to work on those issues together. Paul referenced health, but from a South Ribble perspective, they've got strong relationships with businesses, and that's one of the, I won't use the word weaknesses, but less developed areas in Chorley. So we can learn from some of the things that both councils have done. We can build on the strengths, we believe, of both councils. And the most important thing here from the consultation was that we specifically asked all partners, would it be beneficial for them, because they all got resource constraints, would it be better for them if we worked in one partnership rather than two, because they were attending two different meetings talking about the same things in slightly different areas. And they all said, apart from Lancashire County Council, that their preference was to work in one single partnership. So it's been really the push from the partnership, obviously prompted by us, by the two councils, to ask the question, to come up with a solution that is now on offer, which is one single partnership that works across the two sites. From an officer perspective, because it's part of the shared services, it is also far more efficient for us to run one partnership rather than two. Those are the main reasons.
Fair to say as well. Sorry, it's fair to say, Gary, as well, and to the committee that, I know Howard and Vicky and the team that, if it needed to expand even further, it would. We're not just subscribed around Chorley and South Ribble, and we've talked, haven't we, about Preston as well at times, because I'm looking at the notes here about the integrated care system and care partnerships. That's the real thing we need to break into, and that's actually slightly bigger than South Ribble and Chorley. And if we want to get these programs working and up and running to the benefit of our community, then in some ways we need to make it easier for partners to work with us. So let's work together.
So can I assume that the consultation was just with the partners then?
Vicky, can you confirm it was predominantly the partners, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was with partners, yes.
Just the partners. And who actually made that decision? Was it, a vote or unanimous, or?
It was the two partnerships themselves that had a free vote, and to be fair, we're only one constituent member of that.
Oh, yes.
And I'm looking at Howard and Vicky. I don't think anybody. I think it was unanimous across. Yeah. Apart from Lancashire County Council. Understood why that was, but there was.
Just to make it clear that how.
Well, it was reported on, Karen, as well, through scrutiny and through cabinet.
Yeah. That's fine. Just to make it clear. Thank you for that. Okay. So it says traditionally the South Ribble Partnership has been scrutinised by the main committee on an annual basis. I hope this will continue, and what there will be to scrutinise. So I hope this continues.
It will, and we're happy to take that recommendation, and we'll maybe it's a joint piece of scrutiny you might want to do with Chorley. I don't know. It's up to you guys.
Okay. Yeah. It's very interesting when they come to talk to us at scrutiny. So I'll be pleased if that happens. Thank you.
Okay. Page 14, table 2. Deliver the joint digital strategy. Reference is made to vacancies and skills gaps delaying the delivery of the project. What are the reasons for these vacancies? How confident are you in filling the skills gaps? And will there be greater financial implication to bring the project back on track?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Again, if I take that one. So the part of it has been the process of going through the restructuring, the creation of new roles. I'm pleased to report that predominantly the structure is now filled. There's still a little bit more to do on that. And again, just in terms of how we tackle the skills gaps, there are two ways you can do this. You can either buy in the expertise, or you can train your staff up in those skills. And then it becomes a question of timing and delivery, because obviously the upskilling of individuals into certain technologies does take a little bit of time. So the balance we have to strike, and this is where it may potentially cost us a little bit more than it might otherwise do, is the balance is delivery and timing against that investment in staff. So our challenge will be is to balance those two things and to make sure that over a period we upskill our staff in those areas, because that's a more economic way of delivering some of those services. But it may well be in the short term that we buy some of the skill sets. And that's how we'll get it back on track, David, probably by buying some of the skill sets in.
Thank you. Karen, again.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on page 14 concerning the key performance indicators 20. The percentage of households living in fuel poverty will be better than the Northwest average. Is this not what we would expect with the demographics when compared with other parts of the region? Is this key performance indicator challenging enough, and shouldn't it be eradicate fuel poverty within the borough?
Where to start with that question, Karen? I wish we had that magic wand, and this is one of the things that we take advice, believe it or not, from the local government association on some of these KPIs, so that we can compare our performances as well against other local districts and borough councils. But would we not all want to eradicate their fuel poverty? 100% we would, but can we as a local council deliver that ourselves? I don't think we can. There are many factors that influence that. So we're currently using the KPI, as you've stated below, that's the better than the Northwest average. Is that up for debate and review? Of course it is. But we're sticking with what we've got for now, and then we'll continue to monitor, and if it becomes less relevant or more relevant, then we'll clearly look to change it. But the issue of KPIs, as we all know, is very subjective, which ones to use and which ones not to use. Because to be honest with you, Karen, I don't like seeing KPIs in there just for the sake of it that we can't really deliver upon. So we take your point, though. It's a very, very valid point, and it's something that I know the team will continue to look at.
Yeah, just a reminder, we've got the corporate strategy debate coming up at council in the next couple of months, so there is the opportunity to challenge at that point as to what the appropriate indicator is.
Will?
Thank you, Chair. Page 16, paragraph 21. The mental health support programme for young people being progressed alongside community conversation events. How have the community conversation helped deliver this project, and how many young people are engaged in the community conversation? Thank you.
Very good question, Will. And if you'd given me advance notice, I would have been able to give you the answer. But we'll get that answer for you and the committee, of course we will. I'm sure we've got that data. We know the numbers of people that we did commence that conversation with. Look, the community conversations, obviously we started that through the pandemic, which wasn't ideal, but the officers, with the members were adamant we did get started. And I just think it's a huge opportunity for us, Will, because I think it doesn't matter where you talk. If you start talking to people, it's the start of many opportunities, isn't it? And you know yourself with your background far better than I do, that particularly with mental health and well-being, that conversations are exceptionally important. So this is just, as I say, this is just the start. I'm meeting with Matthew Trafford in the next week or two to discuss as well. He's the member champion for mental health awareness. and looking to develop that programme further. But the actual numbers, we'll find out for you and get them back to you.
Can I come back, please, Chair? Thank you. Just to follow on from that, and thank you for the response. What do we define as young, first of all? And also to move on, I know there are plans potentially for members to have mental health support in terms of training. Do we think that is the best course of action to deliver that into our communities?
Young's anything 6 months older than me. So currently Young's 50 and below. Again, it's a bit subjective, well, isn't it? In some people's eyes, Young's 18. If some other people's eyes is, you're talking 24, 25. But again, if people don't necessarily meet the exact thresholds, but it doesn't mean they're going to be turned away, does it? So I think you're right. It's genuinely anybody that's 24, 25 and below is what's, I think, the definition of a young person nowadays. I think with the training, I think it's really important that all members do get trained, as you say. But I think what the current plan is, and I say I'm going to take this up with Councillor Trafford in the coming week or two, is that the officers are going to go through that process first, and then we'll help leaders, and I know there's some work in Penguin as well that you guys are looking at separately, and then we'll get the members involved, and that all helps, doesn't it, with the ongoing then community conversations that we have, and maybe even like try to develop further, because ultimately we would like to take that training, that mental health first aid awareness and train that stay out to the community as well, and everybody gets trained up as best we possibly can, and then we can all assist hopefully one another. But that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think we need to be absolutely clear about what this is about. So one of the real big challenges is people recognising that somebody has got a mental health issue, and that's predominantly what we'll be expecting a significant of these people to do. They'll be trained in it to identify it and recognise it and understand what then the pathways are for dealing with it. We're not training people up to deal with mental health issues. That requires real specialist training. Yes, there's some low-level mental health issues that can be dealt with in a particular way that don't require specialist intervention, and that's about pathways and support. You might regard loneliness as a low-level mental health issue, and we can attempt to deal with those things at the council. So let's just be absolutely clear about really what we're training people up here to. It's really about identification of individuals with mental health issues. So that's primarily what will come out with it. And, the more you identify, the better opportunity you've got to try and deal with it. So that will be really the outcome we'll be looking for.
Councillor Titherington.
Yes, just to add, Chair, the first aid, the mental first aid training programmes have commenced today, and indeed I'm on it today for the. And there's a number of officers who are on it. It's run for 4 days, and the plan will be to open that out for other officers and for elected members. So that programme has commenced.
Thank you for that. All very good responses. I just think in terms of where I would say was, and this is not against any particular members at all, but I think there might be a lot of scope in the fact of maybe highlighting individuals in the community that work directly with young people, or that might potentially have a bigger impact on this very issue than elected members. As I say, I know there's a lot of elected members who are passionate about it and will be very helpful for people, but I just think in terms of how wide we can go with this and the impact we can have on it, I personally feel that it might be a good idea to spot those people in the community that might have a bigger impact. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a case of us being able to say, well, we practice what we preach. So I do think it's a good starting point, Councillor Adams, but I agree with you. I think there's a wider debate to be had about how mental health works in the community, and we know there are some challenges with the current providers of mental health services in the community, And this might well be, you're right, something that we look to roll out. But I want to be absolutely clear that it's effective first. So let's roll it out internally, get some feedback from it, see how effective it is, and then maybe actually that's something we could think about.
If I could possibly just come back, I mean, I've no doubt that the council has grasped the nettle or the nettle, whichever one it is, when it comes to mental health. But that paragraph 21 does seem to be a bit of a sweeping statement and a bit of backslapping. I mean, I attended 2 of those community conversations, and I don't recall mental health being at the forefront of what people were approaching us with. So I would like to see, if we're going to make these statements, I would like to see something that's quantifiable and actually qualifies that the statement that's being made, because at the moment it does just seem like a sweeping statement.
Accepted.
Which then brings us on to Councillor Colin Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. Page 16, paragraph 24 talks about the community hub action plans. Are these the only examples of the success of the community hub action plans? Could more robust measures of success be developed for community hubs and action plans for the future to make sure they are making a difference? References made to new Facebook pages. How many people are actually viewing these papers, and what is the reach? These pages, I should say, and what is the reach?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. There's obviously a multitude of further examples that we could and will provide you about the success of the community hubs. I think it's fair to say what the officers are presenting here is just a very brief top-level resume of where we're at the moment. And you guys dig in and ask for more detail, so I'll get the team to write to you all and give you some more further examples of the work that the community hubs are doing as we speak. The numbers on that you mentioned, specific numbers around the Facebook hits and contacts that they're making. But I'd hope that all members on the committee accept and realise that we've done some tremendous work around the community hubs so far in over the past 12 months. That's been picked up by the peer challenge as well, where the classing it as exemplars, some of the initiatives that we have working bottom up in developing our community plans. And you know yourself, Colin, as the chair of the Learning and Farrington Community Hub, how much more engaged we are as an administration. We are trying to work with the local community hubs as a decision-making forum. It's fair to say, though, as well, some are working better than others, and that is something that's always a priority, and we know what we need to do, and that develops into the action plan moving forward. But if the committee is asking for more detail, Colin will happily provide that under a separate cover for you all.
Yeah, so you might recall that we committed to a review after 12 months. So we should really now start to progress that review, and I imagine that's something that Scrutiny will want to look at in greater detail or even be part of once that review takes place. So and that will determine really what the next steps are in terms of the development of the community hub. So a really key piece of work. That's, I don't know the exact timing, but it's something that's going to happen in the coming months, that's for sure.
You look like you want to come in. Right, okay. In which case,
I always try to look like that.
in which case, if I can bring Will in again.
Thank you. On the same page, paragraph 25, in particular on food banks, are there any projects encouraging residents to grow their own food and or set up cooperatives? Could the council use its facilities to grow food and educate residents on the benefits of good nutrition?
So I'm going to get Gary to follow up on my initial answer, because I know part of it, the cooperative side of things, Will, Aniela is most certainly looking at to see how the entire food bank network and other community organisations can into some sort of cooperative structure. And if you remember as well, we've joined the Cooperative Council network. It was last year, actually, wasn't it? And so we were getting some important feedback and support from that organisation. With regards to actually growing our own food, Gary?
Okay, so Councillor Adams is right. Nutrition is really key to health. We've been working in a crisis environment. I think we all have to accept that. The main purpose of our approach to it so far has been to just make sure that people are fed. So we've had the HAF programme over the summer period. Have we got a longer term plan for making those food banks sustainable and communities developing assets in their communities that enable us to move forward on that basis? I think the simple answer to that is not yet, but that's definitely something that we should be looking at into the future. That said, there have been some examples only today, I think, of where local community food banks have struggled to access the right level of food. So there are always some challenges with expecting the communities, but there's probably a little bit of a hybrid approach in relation to accessing food. So there's a longer term solution around growing our own. I think there are some elements of that you can do. That's not necessarily a sustainable model in terms of feeding everybody up throughout the year, as it will. So there's some element of it that's really important, and we would, look to encourage that over a period. You might argue that our ability to supply things like allotment places and all those kinds of issues really are around what local communities use and local food growing does, but we haven't got a longer term plan for that. Not one that I've seen and that I've signed up to. Is that for a comment, Nick?
Well, yeah, I think growing our own food is a bigger challenge, but I would just refer that we do have one or two community food programs going where people do participate in a cooperative way, and that is usually successful, certainly in Broadfield with the base, and we'd be looking to sort of, widen that out so that, people are part of a cooperative and paying money into it, but getting, value for money back. And with those food parcels or those parcels that they're able to access, it is vitally important that they are properly, nutritional and that, because, I think you will know, the committee will know, is that the health determinants there are that we do have, nutritional food, proper exercise, reasonable homes and all that. So, that's, I was going to say the long term, it's not the long term, it's the short term, medium term and long term ambition of us is for people to be able to afford to eat nutritional food. Any initiatives or anything that we can do to sort of, improve on that, we will be doing.
Yeah, it's certainly something that came up at our health inequalities task group. And I certainly was very impressed with, I think what you've alluded to was almost a food club where you pay in and purchase a degree of food. Because there has to come a time, surely, where we stop giving people fish and we teach people how to fish. Otherwise, we're not going to progress, or you're pulling a face there.
Very conservative slogan, that, Chair.
I would have thought the Conservatives kept all the fish for themselves, but there we go. But surely we've got to enable communities, and that's what I'm alluding to. Yeah, I wasn't serious. Right, well, let's move on then. Karen, what an opportune moment.
Oh, thank you. My question is on page 18 concerning paragraph 28. The Community Wealth Building Programme. Reference is made to good progress. What evidence is there to support this, and what is meant by good progress, and what outcomes have been achieved so far?
Thanks, Karen. I think, good progress for me was the council in the very first place accepting and endorsing the Community Wealth Building Programme. If you remember, something completely new to the authority, and we've just got the Unified Credit Union open, you recall, some weeks ago, which is now embedded directly into the community in South Ribble, which is, and we are already aware that they're exceptionally busy. And I'm aware that we've now obviously got the community wealth building officer in place, delivering on the schemes. But I think it would be most opportune, Chair, if we actually asked Vicky to jump in here. She's got all the detail. I think that would answer all your questions, Kelly.
Thank you.
Vicky, welcome.
Hi, good evening everyone. So just to provide a bit of a brief update, I suppose I think we set ourselves some clear objectives for this year in terms of the community wealth building programme. One was to, as the leader says, to get that programme approved and then to get some resource in place to support it, which is now in place with the community wealth building officer. We have opened a credit union branch, which will also include some employability options for the staff that will work in the union branch. So it will be using kind of schemes and apprenticeships and things like that to support access into employment for those who work there. It will also include a financial inclusion and financial training scheme for the local community as part of the outreach from the credit union branch. So that offer is being developed now and will be launched soon. And then alongside that, internally, we're getting ourselves as an organisation ready to take on the community wealth building agenda by changing the way that we do procurement. So the council is obviously one of the biggest spenders in this area. And if we can measure that and track that and make sure that we're procuring services and goods ethically, and we can measure that, then that's a really good way to demonstrate outcomes to the wider community and encourage other organisations and businesses to take the same approach. So once we've got the social value portal in place, which is that tool that will help us to measure, we'll then be able to go out and talk to other businesses about how they could also take a similar approach. And do some wider training and development with them. So I think that's been really good progress so far this year, and then we'll be obviously developing up further actions and looking at the impact of that work that we've done up to now. As well as that, we're also doing development and training work with our officers internally, so that when they're doing work and undertaking procurement or delivering projects, they are doing that in a way that upholds the principles of community wealth building. So I think that's probably a brief summary to now, but I can provide more information if needed.
Thank you, Vicky. Yes, it's something that I would like to put on the scrutiny agenda for the future so that all members can scrutinise this, so that we're well aware of the impact of the community wealth building programme, the social value issues of it. Would that be something that we could consider, Chair?
Yep, certainly when we plan our future programme, we can look at that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vicky.
Councillor Colin Sharples again.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad somebody's mentioned credit unions, because that's what my next question is about. What is the initial take-up of the credit union in Leyland? Are there any measures of success that could be included in future reports? And what are the arrangements in place to ensure that all of South Ribble can access the credit union and not just those in Leyland where the office is?
I think I've been asked to come in on this one, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes,
thank you. Everyone's looking.
I don't know who asked you, but anyway, feel free.
Yeah.
Yes, the credit union, as set up, although there is a branch in Leyland, over the coming months, it's a 3-year project, and that project will seek to establish community outreach or community points at which people can access the service of the credit unions. Now, that could be through working with our community hubs, or it could be working directly with the credit union. We do have arrangements in place with them where we will receive quarterly monitoring reports that monitors the take-up of new loans. It takes up the uptake of new members, and so we will be able to get that, and we're just about to receive one of our first quarter reports from them since the launch coming back in June. It's a long-term objective, so I think this will be something that we continually review annually. That's all part of the agreement that we have with them to look at the measures and they're set forward in the response for how they receive the monies from us in order to establish themselves. And it will work on a sort of basis where we're front loading, and that over time it will become a sustainable branch in which they fund. And one of the things that they have just been able to do is recruit a Kickstarter. I think that is currently out for advertisement within the DWP. So that enables a young person within this local area to work at the credit union for the next 6 months. And we would hope that if that person likes that type of work, there is scope for them to actually be taken on either through an apprentice. So when we're looking at the wider wealth building part of this, we've specifically ensured that within the scope, there is the opportunity, at least for individuals to develop, take up a potential career. And again, that all forms part of the community element of what a credit union is there to do.
Okay, thank you. If I could bring in council, Will.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just bring you to page 19 at the top, the establishment of a business support programme. I understand why it's been delayed. I was just wanted to ask if are we any further along in terms of bringing that in and how that may look.
Cheers, Will. I've not seen the outcomes of Councillor Jay Flannery's and the committee's recommendations, because you remember we did set up this all-member working group. Yeah, so we haven't seen the outcomes of your discussions yet, Jay, because everything did get slightly delayed towards the end of the restrictions being lifted. You remember with the latest tranche of COVID grant funds, because the government started becoming exceptionally concerned about fraudulent claims. Didn't need to. I think there's only one claim in Southfibre that was found to be challenged, possibly fraudulent. Yeah. So I've not seen anything yet. There's nothing come to the leaders' brief, but clearly it is a priority for us moving forward. We need to get the businesses up and running as quickly as we can with as much support as we can. Gary? Yeah,
so if you recall, this money was set aside in the budget, really to start to think about, what's the best way of supporting businesses in our area. The government then announced a further tranche of grants. Now, my understanding, Louise will confirm this, is that we've recently made that application for the additional funding. We're waiting for that to be confirmed. What we didn't want to do was to actually spend that money when actually we might have been effectively paying out grants that were then covered by the new scheme. So we're just waiting for that stuff to come through. So that's why there's a kind of delay on bringing the kind of what you might call a local scheme to fruition. And I think we need to wait now until we fully understand the third tranche, what it will cover, and then we'll work out a local scheme thereafter. That's the reason for it.
I think those, Chair, and well, it's fair to say that, as you know, any other initiatives outside and over and above what Gary has just been detailing to the working group there, we would encourage. The executive are up for any input at all into how local businesses can be supported, because as Gary's mentioned, there is a significant sum of capital in there that we can do something different with over and above what the government scheme. So, as I say, we need to keep the momentum up. The business, the working group has been really good over the last, I think, been going about 12 months now, isn't it? Maybe even 18. In fact, the chair's on it as well. So we encourage as much feedback as we can, but we unfortunately are slowed down at times by restrictions.
If I could bring in Councillor Colin Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. Page 20, paragraph 33 talks about climate change and lists a number of actions to be taken to tackle the problem of climate change. The actions appear to be quite modest in their scope. So I was wondering, are we likely to see a more ambitious set of projects in the future? And also, what are we doing to incentivise residents to do their bit regarding climate change? Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. It's yeah, just look, you may think they're modest, but you have to start somewhere, haven't you? And believe me, Colin, getting all members to agree to even some modest challenges and targets has been a challenge for the administration. But for me, moving forward, climate change has to be probably the single biggest priority of every single local authority and the government. We've all seen what's happening to the world. And again, other people then say to me, well, Southfibre won't be able to do anything on its own. Well, we're not looking to do anything on our own. What we're trying to do is best practice, deliver best practice for the council, deliver best practice for our residents, join up with Lancashire, join up with the North West, join up with all the government initiatives. And in direct answer to your question, Colin, that will there be some bigger, more challenging, if that's the right word, targets in our action plan moving forward? There has to be. There has to be, because that's the only way we're going to deal with the challenges that we're facing. Councillor Keith Martin is doing a tremendous job on the committee, on this climate change committee, and now we've got going and we're up and running. I can see some significant progress being made with the climate change agenda, as it is referred to. But no, everything we do now, everything we do within the authority is geared round dealing with, as best we can, the climate change challenges. Try saying that quickly. And I do think Councillor McTitherington wants to add something in.
Yes, Chair. Yes. Well, just to add, I mean, I think members will remember that I think there was 3 papers that went to the last council meeting. There was the decarbonisation plans for council buildings. There was the climate change strategy update, and there was also a report on air quality. And I think it was reported at that meeting is that we were seeking funds to fund further bids that were totaling, up to £4 to £6 million. I understand, that we have been successful in achieving an initial amount of money to prepare a bid for different things that will decarbonise buildings and improve air quality. The air quality action plan that we've got in place. I think the thing is that members should know is that when the government announced these sorts of grants, it's usually a very short time period, and sometimes it's on a first come first served basis. So I think that the successes we've had up to now, I think that the officers need to be commended in being able to put together those bids in a very, very short space of time and getting them in, when the opportunity opens. But it's one of those things, Chair, that we can't be complacent on. We've got to be looking at different ways in which we can tackle climate change, whether that's, electric charging points, whether it's people getting out of the cars, with the active travel. There's a whole range of things that we can do individually, but I mean, we need to work with governments and other partners to make sure that we're moving forward. And I'd just like to reassure the committee that, the Climate Change Committee is looking at, which is an all-party committee, is looking at the various ways that we can achieve our goal of being carbon neutral by 2030.
Okay, thank you. Colin, are you okay with that?
I did mention what are we doing to incentivize residents to do their bit. I'm thinking about heat pumps and things like that. Are we doing anything in that vein?
Well, I mean, I think there are various things that the government do introduce to incentivize it, and then where we do get the opportunity of offering some incentives in that way, we do so. Yeah, I mean, so where the opportunity arises, we get that out there, but much of that will depend on government policies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Will? Oh, no, yes, it is, yes.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20, talking about affordable homes in the borough, how can we mitigate the financial risks caused by COVID and Brexit in our commitment of building our own affordable homes, and when are we likely to see those affordable homes being built? Thank you.
Cheers, Will. I don't think we can fully de-risk the issues around Brexit and COVID. You know, that we've got a huge, well, not just us, up and down the country, there is a huge challenge on construction costs at the moment, as you're aware. And, you know, there's a paper coming forward to Cabinet or Council, Gary, in the next few days regarding the Mackenzie Arms site. Construction inflation in certain areas has gone through the roof, circa 400% in certain commodities, and matters are going to get worse, I think, before they get better. So the way to de-risk it for me is to get on with it as quickly as we possibly can, and then the officers through procurement and contracts pass over that risk to the third-party contractors, don't they? So we must do it properly, we must do it thoroughly, but I think we need to get on with it. If we sit and wait, we'll end up getting nothing done. You know, I'm trying not to be political here, but I do think the impact of Brexit in particular is going to impact for a number of years on the supply chain. And I think it's only now, you don't know what you don't know, and it's only after the event that we've realised the real challenges that we've got across the board, not just with construction inflation. When are we going to see them? We've had a meeting today about the Mackenzie Arms site, and so, which is obviously the first tranche that the second tranche after Tommy Hanson House. We're hoping to get some further approvals from council, get some further support from Homes England, and then we should be on the ground in Bamber Bridge this side of Christmas, commenced on site building the homes which are desperately required. You've then obviously will got the extra care scheme next door that council's approved to the principles of, and I know that Gary and the team of officers, Mark and Rachel, moving as quickly and as swiftly as they can to get that procurement paper to council so we can get started on site with that. But I think we've got to be honest with one another as a council, as an authority, that we've got two options really at the moment. We either sit back and wait and do nothing for a number of years, which some may wish to do, or we just need to grasp the nettle, get on with these schemes now, and just accept that they're going in the short term to be slightly more expensive than perhaps we thought they were. However, you'll also be aware that the business models and the payback that is over a circa 25 to 40 years, Louise, isn't it? And so what may appear to be a significant increase now, once it's modelled through, doesn't have a huge impact necessarily on the financial viability of the scheme. But we're in uncharted territories.
If I can take you to page 22, paragraph 39, we understand that pre-planning advice has been suspended. How long is this going to be for, and how does it impact on the overall quality and speed of deciding planning applications? I don't know if we've got anybody here who can actually answer that.
I can answer the latter bit before Gary jumps in, is that I think pre-planning advice is absolutely critical, you know, because that gives the planning officers here in South Ribble to perhaps influence some of the schemes that are coming forward. But on how long the pre-planning advice is going to be suspended for, I'll pass over to Gary. Yeah,
that service should be back up and running. I'd have to go back and check, but there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. We were experiencing some challenges in terms of the volumes of applications we were getting, but we've put some additional resource in place to mitigate that. So my anticipation would be that that would be resumed, and I'll have to get back to the committee. I'll need to speak to the planning director.
Thank you. If I can bring Will in again.
Thank you, Chair. On the same page, paragraph 39, feedback we receive from residents and other members is that it is difficult to get through to customer services, with delays with recorded messages and often being placed on hold. How is this measured, and is the target ambitious enough?
Well, we've got the answer. The answer, Will, is that every call is registered and logged, and so we've got always got the live data. And if you remember, this is something that this council struggled with historically, and then we made drastic improvements prior to COVID, and then obviously subsequent to COVID. And then, firstly, none of the staff were in Gateway. Secondly, if you remember, none of the telephone systems were capable of initially being dealt with remotely. As far as I'm concerned, the data that I've seen, well, that's drastically improved now. The staff are back. We've got a new IT system in place, and so we're happy to share that information with you. And hopefully, you'll start seeing, if the trends aren't where they should have been, significant improvement moving forward. But we do. I know for a fact we have that data.
Yeah, that's monitored regularly. And you know, I'm not aware that those issues exist. The data isn't showing us that, so I'll need to go back now and have a look, but I'm not aware of any issues with that. I think there've been some challenges with leisure when leisure was first transferred in, and that was to do with some of the technology issues. But I'm not aware of a general issue with performance in the contact centre. But again, I'll need to go back to speak to the director about it, and if there are any, I'll get back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Karen.
Yes, thank you. Page 22 is about the key performance indicator table. Are the accidents reported to the health and safety team from work-related activity, employee accidents of the borough or the wider borough as such? The accidents. Are the accidents? Yeah. Are the accidents related to employee accidents?
Yes.
They're all employee, not.
Yeah, but we do also monitor and report residents' accidents on our assets, so in places around the market and those kinds of issues. So it's combined. Would it be an advantage to have the employees and the residents as a separate? It is split, so we can identify them. Yeah, I think that would be helpful to us. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from members not on the panel? I know some have dialed in. I can't see anybody indicating, in which case, do we have any public questions from them? Again, I can't see anybody indicating. So if I could ask Darren to take us through recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion which the panel could recommend is: 1, the panel thanks the leader and chief executive for attending and the detailed report. The panel welcomes the performance report and progress made during the first quarter of the year. The panel is grateful for the commitment for the new single strategic partnership to be scrutinised in the future and potential for joint scrutiny. The key performance indicator for fuel poverty be reviewed as part of the refresh of the next corporate strategy. The panel looks forward to receiving further information on the number of young people engaged in the Community Conversations programme and the links being made with mental health. The panel welcomes the offer of further examples of the outcomes from the community hubs and the outcome of the proposed evaluation. The panel looks forward to future reports including credit union take-up rates and other data. And finally, the panel is grateful for the offer of an update on the pre-planning advice service and customer contact figures. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything anybody would like to add or remove from those? No, in which case those agreed. Thank you. That now takes us on to item 6, the 2021-2022 Corporate Review and Capital Budget Monitoring Report. Unfortunately, Councillor Tomlinson is on holiday, so Councillor Foster is here to present the item, supported by and welcome to Louise Mattinson, Director of Finance.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Matthew for enjoying his holiday whilst I try and get through this. He sent me a text just before to remind me that he was on the beach. So, if I may, I'm just going to go through a few bits, Chair, because it's the a review of the format of the corporate financial modelling reports has been undertaken by Louise to try and improve the presentation of the information and to make it clearer and easier for the reader of the report to understand the financial position of the Council. This is obviously an evolving process to continuously improve the information provided to focus on the key issues, yet provide additional information for those who may require more detail. The main changes in the report are as follows. To emphasise the two distinct areas covered, we've split the report into two individual reports now, you'll notice. One focuses on revenue and reserves, and one focuses on the capital programme. So if we just quickly mention the new revenue report. So with regards to revenue, in the past this report has firstly reported on salaries, then non-pay issues and then income. However, under the new format, we've tried to provide a more holistic view of the financial position by working through the specific service areas or directories covering the key components of their individual financial position, but be that relating to salaries or non-pay issues or income. We've also removed the reporting from millions into hundreds of thousands than pounds. Again, it's just a standard format reporting so that hopefully the committee and council understand the report slightly easier. We understand and are acutely aware that financial reports are not easier to follow. Then moving to the capital report, whilst the Governance Committee does see the Treasury Management reports and once a year is the 150 plus pages of the annual accounts, which I'm sure you don't want to see, Chair, Cabinet and Council do not see the full picture on assets and liabilities. So as such, we've extended the capital report to provide a more holistic view of the Council's finances, i.e. not just fixed assets, but cash, loans, investments, borrowing and debtors, all of which can have and do have an impact on the revenue position of the Council. So given that, I've now been provided by Louise with a very detailed statement on the movements within the report, which I'm not, Louise, going to actually pass over. I'm not going to read that out to the committee because it could take me 10 or 15 minutes. But for me, the single biggest point that I picked up when we reviewed the Q1 report was the significant increase in the pension contributions that you'll have noticed. And on that, I'm just, if I may, Chair, going to ask Louise to talk you through that, and I clearly will take any questions you may have on the rest of the detail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So within a section of the accounts, so one of the service areas which is called budgets not in directorates, it's showing an overspend forecast for the year of about 365,000, and the main component of that is the additional pension contribution of about 386,000 that we expect we will pay during 21-22. And that's because the amount that was prepaid to the Lancashire Pension Fund back in April 2020 was understated. In essence, what was done then, we'd made a payment on account of what we thought or estimated the pension contributions would be. The actual costs of those employer pension contributions is more. So that would be, the estimate was slightly understated. So I think it's important to note that these are not additional costs to the council that are coming through. They are the actual costs of employer pension contributions that the council owes. And if it hadn't have made the prepayment, then we would be being charged that by Lancashire pensions on a monthly basis, and we'd be handing over the money. It's just that we prepaid and budgeted on the basis of that prepayment. Under the terms of the prepayment, when we took that out, the council is required to pay any significant shortfalls that may emerge in a year. If they're small, then they are just rolled forward, and at the end of the 3-year period, what's called the triennial valuation period, it would just be rolled out, and the recovery would take place then. But if it's more significant, which clearly the 386,000 is in this year, then they would seek to have that cash payment made as soon as possible. The understatement in payment of those pension contributions also impacted the 2021 accounts, but to a lesser extent. Now we've been made aware of this by Lancashire Pensions, because they have done their reconciliation exercise, which says this is what should have been paid, this is what was actually paid, therefore you owe the balance. We just need to reflect that into the accounts. The accounts for 2021 South Ribble are in the process of being audited, and we can make that adjustment before they are finalised, and we've kept the auditors aware of that. But I'm happy to take any questions if that's not quite clear.
Well, maybe Karen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I was going to say this was one of my questions. So, why was this not known sooner, and how is the overspend going to be met in the current year's budget? And are there any lessons to be learned from this underspend and shortfall?
Okay, so in terms of why it's been identified now is because we've just been in conversations with Lancashire Pensions, and they have done their reconciliation exercise to say, okay, this is what your pensionable pay was for the year for 2021, and on that basis this is the amount you should have paid in. But actually, based on the prepayment, that was on figures calculated back in kind of autumn winter 2019, that was understated, so that this is the balance that's due. So it's kind of a truing up exercise, but because of the extent of the shortfall, that's why we're paying it now. Obviously, what was included in the budget setting process was the estimate of what we thought it was going to be, and that estimate was based on the prepayment, which clearly has proven not to be the case, that the cost is higher than that. So in terms of what we will need to do about that, we'll have to manage it within the existing budget. We've taken it into consideration now when we're forecasting the outturn position at the 31st of March. And as you'll see in the report, we are still forecasting a break even for the council at that point in time. And then rolling forward into next year, again, we will pick that up as part of the budget setting process. Absolutely, yeah. The estimate was too low, and that's how it will be dealt with.
Obviously, the forecast for the next few years is going to increase, perhaps in significant terms, so it needs to be budgeted properly, isn't it?
Absolutely. So the prepayment that we made covered a 3-year period. So that was for 2021, 21-22, the current year, and 22-23. There'll be another valuation exercise, and we'll be offered the same options. All councils within the Lancashire Fund were given the option of prepaying, and for that they got a discount. Yes. Yeah. Or the alternative to that was you could just continue and pay it on a monthly basis. You know, had we picked that option, we wouldn't have got the discount, and this would have emerged sooner. But you know, that's something. Yeah, I think the important point is it's not an additional cost; it's the actual cost.
The actual cost. Thank you, Louise.
Will.
Thank you, Chair. As we move through or continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, have we seen the impact of the pandemic on the council's finances to date? And are there any areas where we need to be conscious of, and are the risks, particularly around income, being managed effectively?
I'll just dive in there first, Chair. There's been a small, I think a very, very small drop-off in the collection rates on on domestic and non-domestic council tax collections, but I mean very small, almost insignificant, I would suggest. But it's something that Louise and the team are keeping a very, very close eye on. Will, the concern for the administration moving forward is what's termed as the fair funding review, I think, and local government finances, and we've got a massive challenge, as every local authority has, because we are the unofficial information we're getting is that there's going to be at least a 5% cut announced in the autumn to local government funding. And as you know, as I know, we just can't afford that. So we're just going to have to see what we need to do to deal with it. So I think internally with our income, the other income streams that we have, Louise will come on to this, you know, what her view is as the Section 151 officer with the statutory responsibility. We've got some challenges moving forward. Well, luckily we're in a strong financial position currently. Louise?
Okay, thank you. So as Councillor Foster has outlined, we are seeing a good level of collection across business rates and council tax. So whilst slightly down, it's not completely out of kilter, but you know, that's not something specific to South Ribble, it's something you know, across the country. Again, I think the area where we would probably be losing income, as you would expect, as part of the return to normality, and the pickup is taking some time, is around our kind of what we class as sales fees and charges. But that is cushioned to a certain extent, because for the first 3 months of the year, the government has agreed to an offset, so a contribution towards the losses that are incurred. And in that report, it does refer to the amount that we're going to get. We anticipate we will get an extra £204,000 worth of income from government to assist us with that reduction in the first 3 months of the year. But it is something that we cannot be complacent with, keeping on top of kind of credit control and working with businesses, with residents to ensure we help them to pay, and that we promote our services to maximise the income that we've included in the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Colin Sharples.
Question about earmarked reserves. What stage is the Cabinet members' review of earmarked reserves at to ensure they are at appropriate levels?
Again, I think this is something that Matthew's spent an awful lot of time undertaking recently with Louise and the team. It's something that, if you recall, Chair, Colin, that there was an awful lot of very high level of earmarked reserves as well, a lot of reserves that weren't being used historically. So I can report to the committee, you know, Councillor Tomlinson's on this all the time, and I know him and Louise do speak about it often. And you'll see within the report, there's quite a detailed report, Louise, on the reserve position. When so, you know, it is moving, by the way. There is a, you know, and Louise possibly discussed that now, why there appears to be probably a more significant drop than is actually element of just us spending money, because that's not the case. We're actually returning some business rates, aren't we? Louise?
Okay, so at point 24 of the report, it does refer to earmarked reserves, and at the 1st of April, what we were carrying a level of £23 million of reserves. But what we're forecasting by the year end, that will reduce to 9.7. That doesn't come as a shock, because in the outturn report we explained what those reserves comprised, and a significant element of that, just short of 5 million, relates to money that government gave us in respect of the extra business rate release that they mandated that we gave to businesses. They gave us the money in the financial year 2021, but we needed, because of the accounting treatment of it, to carry it forward via reserves into 21-22 and then apply it then against the collection fund deficit. So it was only ever in reserves at the start of the year, but it was just a timing issue. So that would account for 5 million of the difference. And I know your point was about, you know, how the level of reserves in comparison to others. It's very difficult to do that exercise because an element of the reserves that we've used is for capital financing. So you can find that another authority may have slightly higher levels of reserves, but actually they have huge significant borrowing. The decision has been that it's not borrowing, it's capital financing that's put into it. So, you know, at that we maintain a minimum £4 million of unallocated reserve, which is there as contingency for an unforeseen event. And then in addition to the 4 million, or just over that, we've got the earmarked for very specific things. But as Councillor Foster said, we monitor that to make sure that it is earmarked because it's intended to be used. If it's not intended to be used for those purposes, then earmarked for something else. So we just ensure that it's applied correctly.
Can I just make an important point, and thanks for that, Louise. And we've no, and Louise mentioned this, we've no debt. So we're using reserves currently to fund the extremely, you know, the capital programs that you've been discussing in the earlier agenda item, but we're not sat on any debt, Chair. And I think that's important to point out to the committee as well. We're in a strong position, much stronger than some councils that are sat on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of £1 million of debt. We're not. We're in a strong position, and it is being managed closely. But I'm not being rude when I say this, but earmarked reserves are that earmarked for expenditure. So you would expect to see that pot be expended somewhat during the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I can take to page 17, staffing vacancies, customer and digital. Why are key posts within the neighbourhoods team, assistant director and operative, and this is a key, sorry, yeah, that's read right, sorry. Why are key posts within the neighbourhood team, assistant director and operative, still vacant when this is a key service? Is there sufficient capacity to deliver the council's ambitions for our neighbourhoods? And looking at other vacancies such as planning, at what stage will the services and existing staff fall over?
Sure, I'll take that one. I'm not aware that anybody's about to fall over, and performance in general in all the areas is still relatively good. The performance reports that the Cabinet received and that I receive on a regular basis indicate that is the case. So in relation to the specific vacancies that you refer to, in terms of the Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods, some interim arrangements have been put in place. As with all vacancies when they arise, we review whether it's appropriate to fill that post or is there an alternative way of delivering that. So there have been interim arrangements put in place. The interviews for a manager in that area were held, I think, on Friday. I don't know the outcome of that, but so things are in progress to do that. Just in general, you know, there's no block, if that's the right word, on filling vacancies at the council. It just purely is a timing issue. Other than ones where we have proactively or decided that actually we're going to review what we're doing with that post. So there was a senior post, as you rightly say, in neighbourhoods, and we've reviewed that. There's a senior post in projects and programme management and housing, but again, interim arrangements being put in place, and they'll all feed through into the next budget setting process as to whether we think that it's appropriate to fill those posts permanently again or not, as the case may be. It is somewhat complicated by our desire to think about what we share and what we don't share, and whether they'll feed into those processes. And again, there's a piece of work that we now need to do, given that we're making really good progress on the bits that the council did agree to share, predominantly the next steps, predominantly around ICT and customer services. And then there'll be papers going to the joint committee to say, well, actually, what is the ambition for the council now in terms of the next steps on shared services? So often we do keep posts vacant to protect staff, current staff, working in those services, should we determine that at some point we're going to actually share more. But I'm not aware. I know that members have raised some issues about capacity in some services They're not about to fall over, but I do think that some members are probably of the view that actually there are some things not getting done as quickly as they might like. So that's not necessarily an ongoing capacity issue. That might be a temporary capacity issue that needs resolution.
Okay, thank you. If I can bring in Councillor Colin Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. As regards the capital programme, how confident are you that you can deliver the projects by the end of this financial year without the usual slippage that usually tends to happen? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Colin. You're going to hate this answer, but we're as confident as we possibly can be at this time of the year, because and I never and I'll never make excuses, Colin. You know, we've got a capital programme that we introduced to council back in February that was approved, that we thoroughly thought and still in the main think is absolutely deliverable, and you'll see that we're making great progress on a number of schemes. You know, look at the coach house recently in Penwitham. You know, Worden Hall started, a load of work that's been done in the parks and open green spaces. Where we are still slightly challenged, as we mentioned earlier, is the likes of the affordable homes with the Mackenzie's Arms and the extra care schemes, which is slipping slightly in their development. But overall, I would be disappointed if we don't meet 75–80% of the capital programme as it currently stands. And that's what we're pushing towards, Louise.
Just from sort of a process point of view as well, we as we produced this report, we've now tasked each of the directors to go away in their specific areas to review again the deliverability, the profile of expenditure, to ensure that that is delivered by the 31st of March. And if they think at this point that it's not, then they need to come back to us, because obviously it feeds into other factors that we play through into the budget. You know, we make provision for what we call minimum revenue provision, because we do expect those schemes to complete at a certain point in time and come through as a charge to the income and expenditure account. So it's more than delivering the scheme as well. There are other impacts. So we are in the process of doing that, and we will continue to do so over the next few weeks, and then give a further update at the next quarter report.
Are you okay with that, Colin?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And finally, page 32, playgrounds. When will the Birch Avenue playground in Penwitham be built? And thinking about the other playgrounds being refurbished, how will the community hubs, ward members and young people be engaged in them?
They'll be fully engaged, Chair. You'll see that there was a recent, I think it was a recent cabinet meeting, that's a new consultation, updated consultation process, and you know, that's been adopted by the council, because I think that we've all accepted it. Consultation can be a little bit ad hoc at times, but maybe sometimes it does need to be, depending on what you're consulting upon. But we've successfully delivered, Chair, a number of really quite pleasing playground refurbishments over the past 2 years, and there's a number more ongoing. Was it Birch Avenue? I'm passing that straight over to Louise, because I haven't got an answer, and I don't think Louise has got an answer, looking at the look I'm getting back, but I'm certain we'll write to you. Yeah, I'm certain we can write to you if I haven't got an answer here, but Councillor McTitherington may have a response to that. But I think the programme has been really successful, Chair. And, you know, as we encourage all members, if any of you want any open green spaces or parks looked at, come and speak to us. It's a huge corporate priority. But the other thing just before I do finish, I think consultation at this council is getting much, much, much better with our community. And I think the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and you see the number of respondents that we now get, particularly around social media. We're learning and developing. And so hopefully the community is getting actually what they want. Mick?
Well, I haven't got the exact date when it will commence, but I can assure you that the residents and the hubs will be consulted, because that's the process that we've adopted with other playground refurbishments. So yeah, happy to give that full commitment.
Good, thank you. It is in this year's capital programme, so hopefully we can deliver that in a very important and vital part of the borough.
Absolutely, like we did in Hurst Grange as well. I'm sure you'll appreciate that, yeah.
Do we have any questions from members not on the panel? Again, I can't see anybody indicating on the screen. So any members of the public? No, again, no indication there. So if I could ask Darren to formulate any recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes from the discussion from the panel. The panel thanks the leader and director for attending and presenting the detailed report. The panel welcomes the new user-friendly layout and format of the report. The panel welcomes the commitment to engagement in the delivery of key projects such as playgrounds, and the panel requests an update on the Birch Avenue Playground project. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anybody wish to add or remove any of those recommendations? Are those agreed? Yeah, thank you. In which case, that brings us to the close of the meeting. So thank you for everybody who has attended, to members who have dialed in, and to those who have been watching on YouTube. Enjoy the rest of your evening.